In this video we're going to be talking about mental health, both from a mental ill health perspective and also what we can do as an organisation to help people build emotional resilience and look after their own well-being.
Welcome to ProfileTree TV. We're here in the Innovation Factory on the Springfield Road, and today we're talking to Leigh Carey. Really interesting topic today of mental health. So over to you, Leigh. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, so my name's Leigh Carey. I'm the Executive Director of a social enterprise called the Hummingbird Project. And the Hummingbird Project is an organisation that works with people to recover from mental ill health, but also improve their resilience towards mental health, to try and use those steps to learn preventative measures and look after themselves better.
Brilliant. And a little bit about your background. How did you get involved in the whole area of mental health and mental health services?
Well, I mean, my background is actually communications. That's what my degree's in. But about 10 years ago, I started working with young people from socially deprived backgrounds. And one of the big things that I saw that was a difficulty for them to be able to reach their goals was the fact that they were dealing with lots of stressors and difficulties and you know, family issues and things like that. So when I got the opportunity to go and work for a mental health organisation, I took it. And so for several years I worked with people with mental health difficulties to get back to work. Brilliant. So help their life circumstances and get them back into work, sustained work. And then about 3 years ago, I decided that I would try and do something myself and start my own business, because I found that that the way in which I did things actually was quite unique and worked well. And so I wanted to do something, and I wanted it to be a social enterprise rather than work in a charitable background, to try and, you know, keep things innovative and flexible and be able to respond to need.
Yeah, and it is set up as a social enterprise, I believe. So why did you decide to do that rather than go down the charity route? Because it's quite tempting. What your services do lends itself very well to the charitable route. Yeah.
I mean, one of the big things at the time is that I saw working for big charities is that because they were reliant on government funding or charitable giving, some of the restrictions put upon that, some of the goals and outcomes of that could make services quite dilute and not very person-centred, because it had to be quite big numbers and a very kind of strict flow of traffic for everybody to be able to achieve the outcomes that were set by the funder.
Of course, yeah.
And so even though we do get funds from other organisations, statutory and non-statutory, we wanted to be able to add in the element of organisations being able to pay for our services, because again, part of that is trying to push back from always dealing with people at the point of crisis.
Of course.
And because that's where the funding lies, as it should. But if we were going to try and do early intervention and prevention stuff, we needed to open up the idea of organisations, corporate employers be able to invest in the mental health of their staff, rather than waiting for somebody else to come along and pay for it, because that charitable giving usually comes to the most vulnerable, as it should. And so it shouldn't subsidise people who have access to it in other ways.
Yeah, no, which makes so much sense. And as you say, you know, with that funding, that you tend to have those restrictions.
Of course.
And also the funding's a very difficult route.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, you know, we started in 2016, which obviously coincides with some government changes in Northern Ireland. I think if we had been a charity, we probably wouldn't still be in existence. Because obviously things have become much more difficult in terms of funding being able to be moved along and decisions being able to be made. So it was a choice we made as a good idea. In hindsight, it was a really good idea.
Of course, you're right.
But really it was just based on the fact that we need to be able to be more flexible in the way we do things, and and be able to offer this to people who aren't being funded by other people because they're in the point of crisis. If we want to stem the tide of people becoming quite unwell before they can access services, then we need to open this up to allow other organisations and other kind of markets to be able to access the resilience side of things, the upskilling side of things.
Of course. So the Hummingbird project, then you're obviously involved in a massive range of services. So what sort of services do you offer to the community and the wider sense in corporate, I suppose? Yeah,
so we do, we have a statutory referral stream from GPs.
Brilliant.
So whenever people are struggling and have gone to their GP, there's a way in which they can be referred for one-to-one mentoring services. We also work with a wide range of partners from the community sector, sometimes funded by statutory, sometimes funded non-statutory, to work with groups that are more vulnerable. They may not be in crisis, but they're more vulnerable. So organisations that carry out services where people are coming and they may have complex issues,
yes.
And as part of that, their emotional resilience and emotional well-being is vulnerable. And therefore we'll come in and do a piece of work alongside other organisations as a kind of a wraparound where they do what they do best, and we come in with them and do what we do best to try and create the best service for that person. And then we also have just developed and are launching, after quite a lot of discussion with businesses, and because I know that mental ill health in terms of absenteeism and presenteeism is quite a big issue.
Of course.
It's quite a big cost. And organisations, because it's not their specialty, have struggled to find the best answer for that without being intrusive to people's health. And so what we want to do is and there's several kind of layers and options for employers to engage with us to help keep their staff well, train their managers and people managers to be able to engage in this stuff whenever they see a difficulty, and also to help people who may be off sick or may be struggling to get back to work with the right support.
Yeah, no, because that's really interesting, because it is the responsibility of a business to help their staff, to support their staff. What would you say is really important in terms of workplace well-being and really fostering that culture within a company?
I mean, we recently were involved in a big kind of corporate discussion about whether mental health was a cost or an investment. And, I don't know how some corporate organisations, look at their kind of stats better and see where people are going off sick, what's the reasons for that. What we said is, if you have spent a long time training somebody, whether it's an accountant or a solicitor or a nurse or anything, that investment walks out the door whenever that person goes off sick.
Exactly, and as you say, all those resources that have been put into that person and that development and that training and just even, I suppose, fitting in with the team.
Absolutely, and then that obviously affects the productivity of the members, team members around them. What I would say is that there's been lots of, corporate organisations are becoming more aware of this issue and trying very hard to find solutions, again, that doesn't overstep their mark and be intrusive, and because it is, it is still an emerging subject in terms of stigma. And so, what we would say to them is that you can put well-being options for people, mindfulness, yoga, those kind of things, but really going back to the staff, which is what we do, and saying, well, what would help? What is your situation? What would actually help you? Because sometimes saying, well, you need to go for a walk or, have a read or whatever, that may or may not be possible for that person. And so it just gets discarded as that's not for me, because they may have, circumstances at home that just doesn't allow that.
Of course.
Whenever you have somebody who, single mom, 3 children, sick mother, there's all kinds of...
You can't exactly just say, take some time out for yourself.
Exactly. So you have to be able to take those circumstances into account and say, right, okay, well, what would work for you? And allow those people to gain those skills for themselves and have that responsibility of going, right, okay, I'm starting to feel this here. what can I change? What can I, what can I get support with? What can I know that's difficult? So therefore I need to leave some time around it to, those kind of things. But that's the worker, the staff member can, take that on board themselves. The employers just need to give them the space and the support to be able to figure that stuff out.
Yeah, no, and it's really interesting because, you talk about corporate and everything as well, but, I do think there's a place for in small businesses as well. And people need to, sometimes maybe that's pushed to the wayside, even maybe owners of small businesses who are very stressed and very high pressure, that it's always about the business and getting it, especially in a startup when you kind of are the admin and you are the finance and you are the marketer and you're everything. What advice would you give to the small business owners?
Well, it's funny because as part of my, I was good at about mental health. I had never run a business before, so I had to get support from different organisations, those kind of startup accelerators and things like that. And I have done talks with them and women in business, things like that, where it is difficult because you do shoulder the responsibility of a lot. It doesn't matter even if you're if you're a leader of any kind, leader of a team, whether that be a small business or large business, you're expected to have have things sorted and be on top of things, and that's very difficult. And so it is about trying to be honest about that. One of the most inspiring things for me coming into business has been listening to other entrepreneurs, other business leaders, other women who have held their hands up and say, I don't really always know what I'm talking about. And that's okay. And because very often I think, particularly with social media and things like that, you can look at how people present themselves and go, oh, I'm not doing, doing everything I should be doing as a mother, doing everything as I should as a husband or a business leader or whatever. And actually coming together with other people who'll be honest about the fact that they don't always have everything figured out as well.
I think there's a lot of power in that sharing of experience, isn't there? And actually really, as you say, being honest with people and saying, I started out, I might be in a big successful business or a big successful corporate job now, but actually some days I just don't want to get out of bed.
And that's one of the things that we do in all of our work, is use the power of lived experience. So everybody that works for the Hummingbird project has had experience of mental health difficulties at some stage in their life.
It's very interesting.
And so whenever you're sitting down with somebody, very often we have people who have spent time in statutory services and have felt quite disempowered by the fact that this is the professional and telling you what to do. And part of that opening up is to say, listen, in some way, I know how you feel, and this is what I have difficulty with, and this is what I've done. And we do that in a one-to-one process, but also in a group setting. The power of, 10, 15 people in a room saying, do you know, I struggle with that too. That I would have to. And then the power of them saying, I'll tell you what I do, or have you heard of this? Or, do you know what I mean? Of that community, whether it be in a workplace or to be able to come up with their own solutions, because we're not them.
Yeah, and they're, as you say,
they're the experts. They are the experts in their own lives, and their own experiences. And when you have a group of people who have a shared experience of some kind, again, whether that be a workplace, whether that be, we've worked with family groups who have children with learning difficulties. Who would we be? Because we're not them to say you should do this and you should do that. It's about bringing them together and trying to, galvanise them to think about it for themselves and use each other as peer support.
Yeah, and that builds trust, it builds relationships, it builds just that supportive network where even in the future those relationships will be built and maybe they'll have that support network around them that they can contact someone if they're having a day that's really bad or they do need some support and someone who's living through that experience or has experienced it. Immediately the barriers come down, don't they?
And it's much more sustainable as well because whenever we go into an organisation and we have, we do that group work and then we leave It's leaving behind the feeling that they know that they're not alone and isolated and in having difficulty or whatever. So as you say, it creates that long-lasting understanding and empathy within that group to be able to say, okay, it's all right, to be able to say, without feeling like a moaner or feeling like, you know, they're being weak or letting anybody down, that they can say, okay, having this issue, and then they have somebody to say, right, how do we sort this out?
Yeah, which is, it's brilliant, isn't it, how to actually have that power and know you have that behind you. And are you seeing more incidents in general? You know, it is a hot topic at the minute, it's in the news, it's very current, and obviously this issue of mental health and mental ill health has been around for years, but maybe just was pushed to the wayside, it was brushed under the carpet. It's obviously a lot more prevalent, especially in the workplace. And would you be
I mean,
it's
I think it's kind of it comes from both sides. So one, because the stigma is lifting.
Yes.
That means that people are able to talk about it more. So it may be, you know, I remember there was a figure came out a couple of years ago about the fact that it is now the number one reason for people going off sick in the UK.
Yes.
Which overtook, I think, musculoskeletal. And interesting to wonder how much of that is that mental ill health has increased, or in fact, people would have said, I'm off with a bad back.
But actually,
it's something different. So I think that's part of it, is that people are able to say it more. But I do also think that, you know, there is a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. I mean, I know that whenever I watch the news, if I watched the news all through every night, I would be fairly low at the end of it. And as I say, you know, society has changed. There is a lot more pressure, you know, to be everything that you possibly can be and be on top of things, and financial pressures and things like that. So I think it's actually a bit of both.
Yeah.
But I think it's great that people are able to voice it more, but now needs to come the so now what?
With it.
Yeah.
Which is where you come in.
Yeah.
And obviously education would play a big part in what you do as well.
Yeah.
So would you do a lot of outreach with, obviously, you know, the younger community, schools and things like that?
Yeah, so we do a lot of work with young people. There's several different projects we do. One was, I mean, we had this kind of wild idea and went to a funder last year as to how, you know, this idea of emotional resilience and being able to figure out, you know, what makes them happy, what they have difficulty with, and what supports they can build in. You know, how young can you teach this stuff?
And it's so important.
Yeah,
it really is so important.
And I think particularly because certainly from my generation now into my daughter's generation, we as parents try to avoid drama or trauma or difficulty for them.
Yes.
In a way that our parents didn't. And that's not necessarily a good thing, because at some point they will become teenagers, adults, and they will face these difficulties. Yeah. And if they haven't built those skills, that could be a real problem. So we have worked now with school children down to the age of 8. And I mean, it was incredible. I mean, they were fabulous at being able to come up with their own stuff, and they, you know, they were able to come up with vast amounts of things. And again, not just things they like to do, but people that they can rely on, places that they can go if they're feeling uncomfortable or unhappy, the kind of things they like to do to lift their mood, and then looking at things that they struggle with. What interesting, from 8 to 11-year-olds, one of the things that came up quite frequently that they worry about is Donald Trump.
I know, it's amazing.
Go figure.
The things that actually you don't realise that is going around in their head. You know, they are watching the news, they are aware. And obviously with social media and everything around now, children are more aware of what's happening in the world probably than when we were.
Yeah.
We were busy running around the street
Totally.
playing on our bikes.
Totally. So they were then able to say, right, okay, so for this problem or this difficulty, what do I have in my toolbox to be able to, what people can I go to, what can I do for myself? to be able to figure this out. And if that doesn't work, then what's the layer behind that? You know, what's the professional support? What's the school support? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So that they have, and it's almost figuring out like a wee roadmap for themselves to go, right, here's something that could be difficult. What way can I go here? What can I use to try and figure this out?
Yeah, which is so important, because as you say, we were probably left to deal with things, problems, solve them. Now, as you say, because there are so many things out there, it's children are being sort of spoon-fed a little bit. And I know for myself, coming from, you know, when I was teaching, that we do, even as teachers, you know, because of the curriculum and everything that we have to do, it's not deliberate, but there's just so much there, and there's so many resources there that children don't have to rely on themselves as much.
And of course they, you know, you obviously don't want your child to go through any difficulty.
Trauma or difficulty.
But the thing is that they you know, my 8-year-old came home yesterday with a big long story about them trying to organise a game that they couldn't agree on. And this is quite stressful. And you don't think, oh, that's, you know, that's not something I need to worry about as a parent. But they are doing this stuff anyway. You know, they are figuring stuff out. They have exams. They have friendships on the playground. They have things that stress that you couldn't possibly as a parent. Because it says, again, part of our job is empowering them to be themselves and be ready for the future. And that's, you know, it is difficult. And it is not up to a parent completely. It should be about the schools and the other organisations in the community to be able to help them to do that.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to a parent to really help develop that resilience? And I suppose it's basically to stand back.
Yeah,
and actually,
don't always jump in.
Sorry, I answered your question for you.
Yeah, don't always jump in. And it is really hard.
Yeah.
But actually just sitting with them and going, okay. And then always, because this, in terms of what we do with people who are ill, is, right, what do you think? What do you want? What would help you? Because very often as parents, we kind of jump and go, oh, we need to sort that out. But that may or may not
be the right
solution. It may solve
the
problem immediately, but so it is about trying to come up, co-create a solution to that issue with that young person. And that, you know, they sometimes might go, and again, we have this with adults going, oh, I don't know. Well, all right, let's just figure it out. None of us have all the perfect answers. But if we can just sit and think about it and go, right, okay, well, we could do this. What might happen there? You know, and just figure it out. Because nobody, young, old, nobody has all the answers. Nobody.
Yeah. And even that's part of building that resilience.
Absolutely.
And allowing children to know that actually sometimes you will get it wrong.
Yeah.
Sometimes it won't be right. Sometimes you won't be perfect.
Of course.
And, you know, that's part of that resilience of being able to say, right, okay, I was wrong this time.
Yeah.
I'll try something else.
Yeah.
Which is just so interesting. And back to the Hummingbird project, and I know that, as I say, you do a lot of that educational outreach. You work across a range of communities then.
Absolutely. So we're based in Portstewart.
Yes.
What we're from down around there, and it's such an asset to Wellbeing.
Of course, yeah,
being on the north coast,
on your doorstep, yes.
So we wanted to be based somewhere that people could come to, that's, you know, and use the environment around us in the, you know, maybe not in weather like today, but you know, but we work with organisations all over Northern Ireland. So we have worked with lots of different communities from a cultural background, from a religious background, from an age background, all you know, all completely diverse, because the model that we use, which is what we call the 3U model.
Okay.
And that is we kind of developed that ourselves, which is understand, unlock, and uplift. So we're understanding where that person is and what difficulties they may have, or what stressors they may have. Unlocking their ideas for their own solutions and signposting and helping them to do that, and then uplifting them to put those plans in place to be able to move forward with confidence without our help. And you know, that message is the same no matter what age, stage, whatever, you know, if that piece of work with anyone is the same. And I know, again, it's quite difficult. People say, oh, so you work with such young people, you work with... Well, we do, because there are certain areas of society and certain groups that maybe need that support more than others. But the message is the same.
Yeah.
And as I say, it doesn't matter how healthy you are or where you are in your life, you are always a few steps away from a crisis.
Yeah. Because you just don't know how different a crisis could come.
Absolutely.
And you don't know how you will react or feel or feel emotionally about it.
Yeah. And I have in the past, and it can be things like bereavement, separation, financial difficulty, all those kind of things. And so it's about it. Well, it doesn't matter what your background is. In the same way as you have to look after yourself physically, you have to look after your mental health as well.
Of course. So you're CEO of the Hummingbird project. What sort of job role or what responsibilities do you have in terms of that? Quite a lot, I suppose.
Quite a lot. I think one of the most important things for me whenever we started this was we kind of needed to practice what we preached. And so, creating a kind of culture and values around how we looked after ourselves as staff members, and how we gave each other space to be productive and take breaks if we need to, and flexible working and things like that, which, is quite difficult when you're looking at, you look at kind of standard policy writing and you kind of go, well, yeah, it's a bit strict and that's a bit, and so trying to weigh up, the way in which you can be flexible without affecting your business. A lot of learning around business numbers, all that kind of stuff, which is not something I'd ever done before. And I'm lucky that I have, we have a small team at the moment, but they are brilliant in helping me out, a lot. Basically, we kind of have a management bubble, where we, everything that we do is co-created. It'd be very rare that I would say, I'm going to make this decision. I have to. But it would be very rare that I wouldn't say to the other guys in management.
Have some input.
Absolutely. So yeah, and I suppose doing things like this, because if things are going to be different, and obviously mental health is a big issue at the moment, and we all need to look at ourselves, and statutory sector, all those people need to kind of go, right, how are we going to look at this for the future and create new innovative ways of being able to solve this. My job, I suppose, is to get out there and say, from somebody who not only is working with people but has suffered difficulties in the past myself, there are other ways of doing this. You do not need to write people off or kind of write yourself off. If you have this difficulty, in the same way as people aren't written off if they get a physical health diagnosis, and so that's right and proper. So part of my job is to kind of maybe get in there and make a few waves and kind of get the people who make the policy decisions and decide on money and decide on to kind of go, right, let's just try and reshape this and rethink and get a real kind of joined up way of thinking about this, because that person, when they leave hospital or a medical appointment, their life doesn't stop there.
Exactly.
So it is about trying to help them live their life rather than just be treated, because they will only, if once they pass the other side of that door, they don't have a way of moving forward, they're just going to keep coming to the door again.
Yeah, you're right. And as you say, what the amazing work that you're doing within all the projects and the communities and everything, that needs to be fed back to the people who are making the policies, who are spending the budgets, and to let them know that this is the support that people need, not back to the idea of what we think people want, what we think people need. It's not actually always the case.
Yeah, ask them.
Yeah, they need somebody from your background with your expertise and more importantly your experience to tell them like, this is what people want, and involve them in that conversation. Because
obviously there is, I'm not saying that this is to replace the medical model at all, because there will always, I say, again, with physical health, there will always be a need for specialist support and professional intervention. But I know that they would prefer to have the pressure taken off them, that they are the only solution. Because they can't be. They can't be.
No, and as you say, it's about prevention, but it's also about that maintenance as well. That
Absolutely.
Once you've, as you say, if you get medication or you have some counselling or whatever, it doesn't just after your 6 weeks that you cured, now off you go. It's being able to deal with it going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as I say, any health diagnosis, and there are lots of physical health diagnoses that where somebody has to think, right, this is new and this is different, and I need to maybe change how I live and what I do. Not necessarily in a massive way, but just need to take into consideration some of the things that could make me feel unwell, or could, and embed that into your life, and not say, oh, I have this, that, the other, and therefore that's it, because that's not the case at all. If you take somebody with, a diagnosis of diabetes, for example.
Of course.
They can work with their employers and work with the, community supports, and learning about themselves and how they, to be able to have a full, meaningful life. And it can be exactly the same for people who are in recovery from mental ill health, where they can look and say, right, okay, this has happened. I need to take this into consideration and make changes and put supports in place and just give myself a bit of a break, and be able to work this out so that I can sustain my well-being.
And as you say, what you're providing is helping and really supporting, as you say, the medical side of it. You're supporting all of that that you don't maybe get with the medical side. It's
absolutely.
You're seen as, I'm not criticising the medical model at all, because that's essential, but you're seen as, this is the problem, this is the solution, that's it, done, closed case. And
because there are pressures for statutory and medical interventions, they can't, you don't want people to have to become as unwell as to get there. You want to be able to avoid that, obviously, and not only that, but be able to allow them out from that system earlier, with community support and with non-medical professional support, because that should be for people who are in the most need, and they should get that help and that treatment, and then be able, because they don't want to be reliant on a doctor. Nobody does. And so it is about realizing that actually we have more control, more responsibility, and more options than we give ourselves credit for. Just with a little bit of help and working together, and just that awareness of ourselves and what we can and can't do.
Yeah, no, you're right. It really is so true. And just in terms of, people who are feeling that maybe something just isn't right, or something's not connecting, what would be your advice on the route to take, in terms of, if you do have that self-awareness that, I just know that something isn't right, and I need to maybe see someone, what route do you, would you advise someone to take?
I mean, obviously, if it's something that you feel is really putting your health at risk, or your ability to live your life at risk, then go and see your GP. Absolutely. And, they, GPs have more tools at their disposal now to be able to help. Obviously use someone that you trust. Use your friends. It may be something, I had somebody who was had to go off work for 6 months, because there was a change in circumstance. They couldn't leave their kids to school. And so rather, and still go to work. So they went off work because they needed to, and actually, what that person needed was to be able to speak to the employer, or to be able to speak to a friend, or whatever, to say, I maybe need to come in half an hour later. Or, so use the people around you, and please realise that you're not alone. You're not alone. If you think that if you think that nobody else has felt the way you feel, or that everybody else is doing much better than you, it's simply not the case. So reach out and speak to somebody. You know, even go online, you know, you will see that there is help out there. And as I say, if it's something that you think that you can't keep a handle on and can't use things like, you know, getting a bit of extra sleep, you know, taking some time to yourself. If you can't do that, if your circumstances, and go and see your GP and just be honest with them about that.
Yeah, which is, it's just so important. And just taking a step back, and interesting as well, you work in partnership as well with a lot of companies and a lot of different communities. I mean, we love partnerships at ProfileTree. We just think it's the way forward in terms of, you know, you've such a wealth of expertise there, and two heads is better than one, and all of that. What sort of partnerships do you work?
Yeah, I mean, so what we would do is we would work a lot with organisations who I say work with groups that could be vulnerable. They work with, you know, different socioeconomic backgrounds. They may have health difficulties. They may have, you know, family difficulties, all kinds of things. And they're providing a service to them. For, you know, whether it might be social activities, it may be, you know, support if they're, you know, having difficulties financially, whatever. But in the process of that, they're saying, you know, we're seeing an emotional difficulty here as well, and we can't. So it's like, right, okay, they still need the stuff that you're doing, and that's a real asset to them, and therefore can we come in along with you and provide them with some solutions for this, alongside what you're doing, and therefore they're getting needs or vulnerabilities met all in the same place without having to go, well, go and do this here, and then, oh, I did that, and go, just work together. And again, I know that when it comes to funding and things like that, you know, things are tough for organisations, and so they want to go, oh, but it you know, that, you know, kind of disjointed way of working isn't sustainable, because it's not necessarily giving the best to the person that you're trying to provide a service for.
Yeah, and as you say, sometimes your service maybe isn't standalone. It goes very hand in hand with community and social and integration and returning to work and all of that. It's all, you know, there's a lot of factors in there.
Yeah, and we would, you know, anybody who wants to know what of all the organisations, because I don't want to mention any just because I miss any out.
Yes, I'll be in trouble.
I'll be in trouble. So, you know, go and have a look at our website, have a look at all the crazy things that we've done with lots of different people, and you know, sometimes people go, well, that's a bit different. So what? If it works, great. You know, if it makes that person who, whatever they've been engaged with, if it gives them more resilience, more happiness, more comfort, more skills, why not?
And of course, so you've obviously, when we talked about this at the beginning, where you chose the social enterprise and we talked about the charity, how do you think, and I'm back to the partnerships actually, how do you think going down the social enterprise route compared to like a business that's just for profit, how do you think that's affected what you do?
Yeah,
I mean, and what makes it sort of different for you?
I mean, I think, you know, there are business for profits that provide kind of service support for, you know, different life coaches and kind of professional services. I came from working with some of the most vulnerable people in society. And so for me, that was always going to be, we will never, ever say we are purely a corporate business. There we go. Because I think that social value adds authenticity to us. It also keeps us in touch with, you know, to have that spectrum of people who are really struggling and know what's going on in terms of kind of professional solutions and stuff for them. And it helps you to get up in the morning and do good, because you're not just doing it for the money, you're doing it to help, and especially when, you know, I live in the community that I work in. So I say, having somebody, you know, start me saying, you know, my mom's doing so much better, you know, that, you know, no salary is gonna make that any better or worse. You know, it's important to be able to feel good, particularly when you are working in you know, with people who are struggling. It is a stressful job. We have to, you know, assess a lot of risk and make decisions and try and help people the best way we can. So actually doing good rather than just making money just makes that all that kind of bit easier.
And it's lovely to see that that's the culture you've set up in your own business, where people can, you know, be flexible, and that mental health or mental ill health is right at the forefront of what you do, and actually being very solid as a team and allowing people to have input. It's so important as a company culture, and fostering that. And obviously you set out to build that culture.
Because I realised that, you know, I say in the environment, you know, I see a lot of people who work with people with mental ill health, and it's tough. You know, it's tough. And even when you've spent thousands of hours sitting across from somebody, you know, there are days where it does hit home, and it does, you know, you want to help people, and you don't always have the answers. And so being able to step out and get support from your colleagues, and just, you know, play music in the office, and just, you know, just things that help you to relax and take your job very seriously, because it is a serious job, but also be able to be a little bit vulnerable and go, I'm not feeling it today. I'm and having somebody there, even if, you know, even as a boss, to have somebody there say, look, would you go home? It's 4:30. You're not going to do anything else. Go on.
Which is lovely to have that culture, as you say, and especially the nature of what you do can be very stressful and very tough at times. To be having that culture where people feel that they can come and speak to you, they can have input, that it's a team approach is amazing, and, you know, needs to be fostered, I think, into any business.
And again, you know, I think that for the, you know, for what the guys do in the Hummingbird project, they need to believe in it. So they need to be part of the creating of that. If I just walked in and said, right, today you're going to do blah, 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 and they didn't know what I was talking about or why we were doing it or what the point was, how can they go and do that with the kind of passion and you know, openness that they need to do it with? So say there isn't anything that isn't a kind of in its development isn't well, yeah, that's a good idea, and let's think about it this way, and, you know, so it's cool. It's nice to
no, that's lovely. So big question, what does the future hold for the Hummingbird project and mental health services in Northern Ireland?
Well, I hope that us now kind of going into this year, kind of spreading our wings out to other members of the community in terms of employers, and that to kind of share that responsibility will be taken up. It certainly sounds like it's something they want to do, and it may take a wee bit of persuading for some to say that this is worth investing in, and not just worth investing in, but in terms of pound for pound, being able to see how much good it could do commercially for a business to have people who are in good health. And I hope that, you know, mental health services will, and I think they are starting to, say in the Northern Ireland environment at the moment, it is quite difficult to put new innovative things in place. But I do know that there is a keenness to say, right, okay, we need to rethink this, and so I hope that we are part of that conversation. And do everything that we can to provide the best support to statutory services and all the people that are stakeholders in their communities to come up with the best solutions, give any help that we can to be able to help people to have, you know, good emotional health.
So all exciting, and I know plenty to keep you out of trouble anyway.
Absolutely.
For 2019.
Absolutely.
So if anybody does want to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
Our website.
Brilliant.
And I know that there'll probably be contact details on.
Yes, we will have that on the video.
We have a Facebook page, Hummingbird Project NI, and we have a Twitter handle as well. And I think I say that's all on there. I'm on LinkedIn. Well, we're on LinkedIn, but mainly, you know, a lot of the content would come through me. We're based in Portstewart. Yeah, absolutely get in touch if you want to help other people or anything at all. We would love to hear from you and hear any other, because lots of people have ideas about this stuff, and we're more than happy to listen to anybody's ideas to how we could work better in the future.
And as you say, you like the out of the box,
absolutely
crazy mad ideas. The crazier the better.
The crazier the better, because whenever things are deteriorating, as we can see, we've got to throw some stuff out the window and say, right, we need to think about this differently.
Yeah, no, that's thank you so much for coming in. It's been so interesting and amazing, the different impact you're making across different communities, different sectors, different even industries. So really thank you for coming in.
Not at all.
That's all from us today at ProfileTree TV and the content marketing agency. Been really interesting chat today. Thank you so much for watching, and we will be with you again soon.